The door sealed with a hiss that made everyone in the observation gallery lean forward. Daniel Reeves felt the weight of 40 pairs of eyes pressing against his back through the reinforced glass. Beside him, Pip shifted her weight from paw to paw, her ears already flattening against her skull. The conditioning chamber looked ordinary enough. White walls, smooth floor, adequate lighting. Nothing about it suggested danger. That was the point. The real test would come from what the room released into the air, not what it contained. Daniel kept his breathing steady. Instructor Tallis stood on the other side of the glass with his arms crossed, face unreadable. The older Corvian had made his opinion clear during breakfast. Humans were too soft. Their methods were too gentle. And this particular human was going to get himself killed by an animal he foolishly thought of as a friend. Pip whined low in her throat. The sound cut through Daniel like a blade. He wanted to reach down and touch her head, offer comfort, but the rules were explicit. No contact until the test began. The handlers and trainees needed to see what happened when instinct met trust under the worst possible conditions. A young Corvian trainee pressed her snout against the glass. Her handler, a nervous woman from the Mars colonies, whispered something Daniel could not hear. 3 other human Corvian pairs had attempted this test in the past month. All 3 had failed. 2 handlers spent time in medical afterward. The 3rd refused to continue the program and returned to Earth. The coalition representatives watching from the upper gallery did not look optimistic. Budget reviews happened every quarter. Programs that could not show results got cut. Simple economics. The Human Integration Initiative had cost millions of credits. If Daniel and Pip failed today, those credits would go elsewhere. Amara Osi stood at the monitoring station, her fingers dancing across screens that displayed readouts Daniel could not begin to interpret. She caught his eye through the glass and gave a small nod. "Trust the process," her expression seemed to say. "Trust what you built together." The chamber hummed, barely audible at first, then growing stronger. Pip's whine changed pitch. Her pupils dilated even though the lighting had not changed. The pheromone dispersal system had activated. Daniel knew what came next because he had studied the test protocols until he could recite them in his sleep. The chamber would flood with chemical signals designed to trigger Corvian hunting instincts. Territorial aggression markers, prey identification compounds, fear responses that demanded immediate action. The scientists who designed this test had pulled from every predator species they could find. They wanted to know if training and bonding could overcome biology. So far, biology had won every time. Pip took a step away from Daniel. Her muscles bunched under her dark fur. She was young, barely past adolescence by Corvian standards, but already she massed more than Daniel did. Her claws, normally retracted and hidden, began to extend, 4 inches of bone and keratin that could shred through flesh like paper. The temperature dropped. Daniel felt it immediately. His breath began to fog. The chamber was programmed to simulate hostile environments. Cold affected human reaction time, made them slower, more vulnerable. Meanwhile, Corvians thrived in cold. Their thick fur and efficient metabolism turned them into apex predators when temperatures fell. Around the gallery, other Corvians stirred. Some looked uncomfortable. The pheromones were strong enough that even through the sealed chamber, trace amounts affected them. One veteran handler put a hand on his partner's shoulder, steadying him. Pip's eyes had changed. The warm amber that Daniel knew so well had given way to something flat and predatory. She lowered her head. Her lips pulled back to expose teeth designed for rending meat from bone. A growl built in her chest, starting deep and rising until it filled the chamber with sound. Tallis reached for the control panel. His hand hovered over the emergency abort. One press and the chamber would vent, fans would clear the air, and this would be over. Another failure to add to the list. Daniel did not look at Tallis. He kept his eyes on Pip. She had frozen in place, her body coiled like a spring. The biological imperative screaming through her system demanded action. Everything in her genetic memory told her that the creature in front of her was prey, weak, vulnerable, something to be hunted. He thought about the first time he met her. 6 months ago in a holding facility that smelled like fear and disinfectant. She had been curled in the back of a cage, all bone and terror, refusing food from anyone who approached. 4 handlers had already given up on her. Too traumatized, they said. Too aggressive. Not worth the risk. Daniel had spent that first day sitting outside her cage, not speaking, barely moving. He brought a book and read aloud. Nothing important. just words to fill the silence. On the second day, she crept closer to the bars. On the third, she took food from his hand. On the fourth, she fell asleep while he sat beside her cage. The coalition did not understand what he understood. Pip was not aggressive. She was terrified. And terror could look like rage if you did not know the difference. The lighting shifted to a predator spectrum. Ultraviolet and infrared mixed together. Pip could see perfectly. Daniel was nearly blind. His human eyes were not built for this. He was at every possible disadvantage. Pip launched herself forward. 200 pounds of muscle and instinct moving faster than thought. Her claws extended fully. Her jaws opened wide. Daniel turned his back to her. The gallery erupted in shocked voices. Someone shouted. Talus hit the abort button, but the system required a 3-second delay for safety protocols. Daniel felt time stretch. He made a gesture with his left hand, fingers spread in a pattern they had practiced 1,000 times. A signal they developed together during those long months of training. It meant trust. It meant pack. It meant family. 3 seconds felt like forever. 6 months earlier, Daniel had walked into the training facility with one bag and a terrible sense that he had made a mistake. The recruitment officer back on Earth had painted such a pretty picture. Join the Coalition Handler Program. Bridge the gap between species. Make history. The reality looked more like a prison for dangerous animals. The facility director, a man named Roberts with tired eyes and graying hair, walked him past rows of reinforced enclosures. Each held a Corvian trainee. Most slept or paced. A few watched the humans pass with interest that made Daniel's skin prickle. They stopped at the last enclosure. The one furthest from the common areas, tucked into a corner where the lighting barely reached. This is Pip, Roberts said. 4 handlers have tried. None lasted more than a week. She won't eat consistently, won't follow commands, shows aggression toward anyone who gets close. Daniel peered through the bars. In the shadows, he could just make out a shape. Small for a Corvian, curled so tight it looked painful. What happened to her? Daniel asked. Roberts checked his tablet. Orphaned during a territorial dispute. Found alone. Been in facilities like this for 8 months. The Corvian authorities asked us to try. They don't have the resources to deal with traumatized juveniles. Daniel knelt down, making himself smaller. Through the bars, he saw one amber eye open and fix on him. Not aggressive. Not challenging. Just watching with the wariness of something that expected pain. Everyone says she's the problem case. Roberts continued. Honestly, I'm about to recommend she go back to Corvian space. Let their medical teams handle her. What happens then? Daniel asked, still kneeling. Roberts shrugged. Not our concern anymore. Daniel understood what he was not saying. Traumatized juveniles who could not integrate did not get second chances. Resources were limited. Difficult cases got simplified. He spent that entire first day outside Pip's enclosure. Did not try to enter. Did not push. Just sat and existed in her space. He brought a book about wolf behavior he had read 12 times. Started from the beginning and read aloud. His voice filled the silence. By evening, Pip had crept closer to the bars. Still in the shadows, but closer. Her eye never left him. On the second day, he brought food. Not the standard nutrition blocks the facility provided, but raw meat from the commissary. He had spent his own credits on it. Pushed it through the feeding slot and backed away. Pip waited until he returned to his spot against the far wall before she approached. She ate slowly, watching him the entire time. The third day, she took food directly from his hand through the bars. Her teeth were gentle, careful, like she understood how fragile human skin was. The fourth day, the facility director found Daniel asleep on the floor outside the enclosure. Inside, Pip slept too, pressed against the bars nearest to him, as close as she could get. This is highly irregular, Roberts said, but his voice lacked conviction. He had seen the reports. Pip had eaten 3 full meals. Had not shown aggression once. By the end of the first week, Daniel was cleared to enter the enclosure. He sat in the center while Pip circled him. She moved closer with each pass until finally, she lay down with her head near his leg. Not touching, but near. Trust was being built in inches. The other handlers thought he was insane. Traditional Corvian training emphasized dominance. Establish yourself as pack leader immediately. Show strength. Demand obedience. Daniel's approach looked like weakness to them. Talus, the senior Corvian instructor, made his disapproval known at every opportunity. He cornered Daniel in the commissary during the second week. "You're coddling her," Tallis said flatly. "She needs structure, discipline. You're teaching her that humans are soft." Daniel looked up from his meal. "I'm teaching her that humans are safe. There's a difference. Safe won't keep you alive when biological imperative kicks in," Tallis replied. "Corvians are predators. You need to establish dominance or she will see you as prey." "She's not aggressive," Daniel said. "She's scared," Tallis snorted. "Scared things are the most dangerous. They react. You won't have time to sing her a lullaby when her instincts take over." But Daniel had worked with traumatized animals his entire adult life. Wolves who had been abused. Big cats rescued from illegal breeding operations. He understood the difference between fear and violence. Pip was not looking for someone to dominate her. She was looking for someone who would not hurt her. Progress came in small moments. The first time Pip allowed Daniel to touch her head. The first time she followed a command not because she had to, but because she wanted to please him. The first time she positioned herself between Daniel and another handler who had approached too quickly. Protection, not aggression. The other human handlers began asking questions. How did he get her to trust him? What was his secret? Daniel tried to explain that there was no secret. Just time, patience, genuine care. You could not fake it. Animals knew. They always knew. By month 3, Pip followed Daniel everywhere within the facility. She waited outside his quarters each morning, sat beside him during meals, participated in training exercises with enthusiasm that surprised everyone. The problem case had transformed into one of the most responsive trainees in the program, but Tallis remained skeptical. Training facility conditions were controlled, predictable. The real question was what would happen under stress. When chemical signals told Pip that Daniel was prey, and every instinct she possessed demanded she act on that information. The conditioning chamber was designed to answer that question, to push past training and trust and find the bedrock of biological imperative, to prove whether the bond between species could survive the worst possible circumstances. In the present moment, as Pip launched herself toward Daniel's unprotected back, all those months of slow trust building came down to a single instant. Either he had taught her something stronger than instinct, or Tallis had been right all along. Inside Pip's mind, the world had narrowed to chemical commands and genetic memory. The pheromones flooding the chamber screamed a single word in a language older than thought. Hunt. Her muscles moved without conscious direction. This was what her species had done for millions of years. Identify prey. Close distance. Strike fast and strike hard. The weak thing ahead of her with soft skin and breakable bones was prey. Everything in her blood knew this truth. But underneath the chemical assault, other memories fought for space. Daniel's voice reading from his book while she huddled in shadows. The careful way he pushed food through the bars, never demanding, never threatening. The first time she had dared to rest near him and nothing bad happened. She was mid-leap when she saw his hand move. The gesture. Their gesture. Fingers spread in a pattern that meant safety. That meant pack. That meant he trusted her even when she could not trust herself. The world tilted. Her trajectory shifted. Instinct demanded one thing, but something deeper, something newer demanded another. In the space between heartbeats, Pip made a choice that went against everything evolution had written into her bones. She landed beside Daniel, not on him. Her paws hit the floor and she spun immediately to face the door, to face the source of the terrible smells flooding her senses. Her growl changed from hunting to warning. Protective. Behind her, Daniel remained still, his back still turned, vulnerable, trusting. The gesture said he believed she would protect him, not harm him. The chemical assault intensified. Pip's vision began to blur at the edges. The pheromones were too strong. Her species had not evolved to resist these specific compounds. The test designers had made certain of that. They wanted to find the breaking point. The place where training failed and biology won. Her legs began to shake, not from fear or aggression, but from the sheer effort of resisting what every cell in her body demanded she do. Turn around, attack the prey, feed. The commands were simple and absolute. She thought about the night terrors she used to have. Waking up thrashing and snarling in her enclosure, Daniel had heard her one night. Instead of staying away like the other handlers, he had come. Sat outside her bars and talked softly until the panic subsided. He sang something, A human song she did not understand but found soothing anyway. The memory helped. Not much, but enough to keep her focused on the door instead of on Daniel. In the observation gallery, she could hear voices. Agitated, concerned. The glass was thick, but her hearing was sharp. Someone said the word abort. Someone else said medical. Pip tried to focus on Daniel's breathing behind her, slow and steady. How could he be calm when she was falling apart? The temperature dropped further. Her breath fogged the air. This should have felt good. Cold meant hunting weather for her species. But paired with the pheromones, it just added another layer of stress. Her body wanted to move, to run or fight. Standing still took every ounce of will she possessed. She remembered the first time Daniel entered her enclosure. The fear had been overwhelming. Humans were small, but they were predators too. They built cages, caused pain. Every human she had met before Daniel had proven that truth. But Daniel just sat, did not reach for her, did not make demands, just existed in her space and let her decide what happened next. That patience had meant everything. In a life filled with things happening to her, someone finally let her choose. She chose to approach him, chose to take food from his hand, chose to trust that maybe, just maybe, not all big things would hurt her. Now in the chamber with her control fraying and her vision starting to tunnel, she chose again, chose Daniel over instinct, chose trust over biology. The effort was costing her. She could feel herself starting to collapse. Her legs would not hold much longer. The pheromone concentration had reached levels that should have been impossible to resist. The test designers had not expected anyone to get this far. They had not planned for what came after resistance. Pip's vision darkened at the edges. She was going to pass out. The realization came with a strange sense of relief. If she was unconscious, she could not hurt Daniel, could not fail him, could not prove Talus and all the others right. She felt herself falling. The floor rushed up. But before she hit, something broke her fall. Arms, human arms. Impossibly weak compared to Corvian limbs, but there they were, catching her. Holding her. Daniel's voice cut through the chemical fog. Speaking in Corvian. His accent was terrible. He mangled the vowels. But the words were clear. My pack, my family. I protect you too. The meaning hit harder than the pheromones. Humans were not supposed to understand pack bonds. They were supposed to be solitary, weak. But here was Daniel claiming her as family in her own language, putting himself between her and the danger she could not see. Something in her chest loosened. The panic that had been building for months, maybe years, began to drain away. She was not alone. Had not been alone since the day Daniel sat outside her cage and read to her like she mattered. Through the failing edges of her consciousness, she heard him start to sing. The same song from those nights when nightmares ruled her. The human lullaby that made no sense but felt like safety anyway. His hand stroked her fur. His heartbeat pressed against her side was steady and sure. The chamber's sensors were screaming. The pheromones were at maximum. But none of it mattered anymore. Pip's body finally surrendered to exhaustion. She let the darkness take her, secure in the knowledge that when she woke up, Daniel would still be there. He always was. The engineers arrived at a dead run. Talus stepped aside as they swarmed the control panel, their tools already out and diagnostic screens flashing red. The chamber door had locked completely, not just the electronic systems. The physical bolts had engaged. Something about the power surge from the pheromone dispersal system at maximum had triggered a cascade failure. How long? Talus demanded. The lead engineer, a woman with grease under her fingernails and panic in her eyes, shook her head. 3 minutes. Maybe 4. We have to cut through the manual override circuit. Inside the chamber, visible through the glass, Daniel held Pip against his chest. Both of them were on the floor. The human looked impossibly small next to the Corvian, even though Pip was barely adult-sized. He was singing. Talus could not hear the words through the soundproofing, but he could see Daniel's lips moving, could see his hand stroking Pip's fur in steady, rhythmic motions. Amara appeared at his shoulder, her tablet thrust forward. Look at this. Talus glanced at the readouts. Biorhythmic data. Heart rates. Stress hormones. Neural activity. The numbers should have been catastrophic. Pip had collapsed. Daniel was hypothermic. But something in the data did not match what Talus expected. Their stress responses are inverting, Amara said quietly. As Daniel's calm increases, Pip's panic response decreases. even with the pheromones still flooding the system. That's impossible, Talus said. Chemical responses don't work that way. Apparently they do if you introduce cross-species bonding variables we never tested for. Amara pulled up another screen. Look at his oxytocin levels. They're spiking. His brain is responding to Pip's distress the same way a parent responds to a child. Talus stared at the numbers. He had worked with Corvians his entire career, had partnered with his own companion for 20 years. They were effective together, professional, but he had never looked at his partner the way Daniel looked at Pip, had never held him when nightmares struck, had never sung him songs to ease fear. Around the observation gallery, other handlers watched in silence. Some of the Corvians had moved closer to their human partners, unconscious shifts in position. Seeking comfort or offering it, Talus could not tell which. A young trainee named Scylla pressed against the glass. "Instructor, why isn't the human running?" "The door will open soon. He could move to the exit." Talus opened his mouth to answer, then realized he did not have one. Why wasn't Daniel moving? The smart thing, the tactical thing, would be to prepare for evacuation. Instead, he stayed on the floor with Pip, singing to her like the world was not falling apart around them. "Because he doesn't want to leave her," someone said. Talus turned. It was his own partner, a veteran Corvian named Breck. They had worked together for 2 decades, survived combat situations, completed missions others thought impossible. But Breck was looking at him now with something strange in his eyes. "What?" Talus asked. "In 20 years you have never stayed when I was hurt?" Breck said quietly. "You always went for help. For medical. For backup. You never just stayed." The words hit like a physical blow. Talus wanted to argue, to explain that getting help was the logical choice. The correct choice. But looking through the glass at Daniel holding Pip, he suddenly understood that maybe logic was not the only thing that mattered. The engineers worked frantically. Sparks flew from the control panel. The lead engineer cursed. "Secondary system is not responding. We need to cut power to the entire wing." "Do it," Amara ordered. The lights flickered. Emergency backups kicked in, bathing everything in red. Through the glass, Daniel looked up. His lips were blue. His hands shook. But he did not stop singing. Did not stop holding Pip. Medical staff arrived with a stretcher and emergency gear. They crowded near the door, ready to rush in the moment it opened. The facility's chief medical officer, a man named Stevens, checked his equipment. "Human's core temperature is critical," Stevens said, reading remote sensors. "If we don't get him out in the next 2 minutes, we're looking at serious hypothermia damage." "The Corvian?" Talus asked. "Stable. Surprisingly stable. Her vitals are better than they should be given the pheromone exposure." Stevens frowned at his readings. "It's like something is regulating her stress response from outside." Amara met Talus's eyes. They both knew what that something was. A young human handler, the woman from Mars colonies, spoke up. Her voice shook. "If they die in there, the program ends." "Right, that's what I heard. Coalition pulls funding." No one answered, but the silence was confirmation enough. Scylla, the young Corvian trainee, made a sound low in her throat. "That's not right. They proved it works. Look at them." He chose to protect her. She chose not to hurt him. That's what partnership means. "Partnership requires both parties to survive," Talus said, but his voice lacked conviction. The engineers shouted. Something had given way. The door's bolts began to retract with agonizing slowness. Manual override was always slower than electronic. Safer, but slower. Inside the chamber, Daniel's singing had stopped. His eyes were closed. For a terrible moment, Talus thought they had run out of time. But then he saw Daniel's chest rise and fall. Shallow breaths. Barely there, but alive. Pip stirred. Her eyes opened, still clouded from the pheromones, but focusing. She saw Daniel's face. Saw the blue lips and the shaking. Her ears pressed back, not in aggression, but in distress. She made a sound Talus had never heard before. A keening whine that spoke of loss and fear. The door opened. Medical staff rushed in, but Pip would not let them near Daniel. She positioned herself over him, protective, gentle with her bulk, refusing to move. Stevens approached carefully, hands visible. "Pip, we need to help him." "Let us help?" Pip looked at the medical officer, looked at Daniel. Made her choice. She shifted aside but did not move away. Her head stayed pressed against Daniel's shoulder as the medical team worked. Outside, Talus watched his entire worldview crumble. Recovery took 18 hours. Daniel woke up in medical with warming blankets piled high and an IV line feeding nutrients into his arm. His first words were about Pip. "She's fine," Amara said from the chair beside his bed. She looked exhausted. "Better than fine, actually. Medical cleared her 6 hours ago. She's been sitting outside this door ever since. Won't leave." Daniel tried to sit up. His body protested. Everything hurt in that deep bone-level way that came from real cold. The test. "Did we pass?" Amara's expression shifted, something between amusement and wonder. "Daniel, you and Pip stayed conscious in maximum pheromone exposure for 4 minutes past when anyone thought possible. You calmed a Corvian in full biological panic, and when the door finally opened, she let medical treat you. I'd say that's a pass. But the door malfunction, that wasn't supposed to happen." "No," Amara agreed. "It wasn't. But what you both did during the malfunction taught us more than the planned test ever could have." She pulled up her tablet, showing him data he did not fully understand. "Your biorhythmic patterns synchronized. When your stress decreased, hers did too. Even with chemicals telling her brain to panic, your presence overrode it." Daniel processed this slowly. His thoughts felt sluggish. "That's not possible." That's what Tallis said. Then we showed him the data from his own partnership. 20 years together. Good working relationship, but zero synchronization. Zero emotional regulation across species lines. Amara leaned back. "You want to know what the researchers are calling it? Cross-species oxytocin response. Humans produce bonding hormones with other species. Corvians evolved to respond to pack bonding signals. Put them together and apparently you get something unprecedented." Through the door, Daniel heard a familiar whine. Pip. Still waiting. He wanted to go to her, but his legs would not cooperate yet. The coalition representatives watched everything. Amara continued. "They've been in meetings for the past 12 hours. Director called twice. They're talking about restructuring the entire program." "Restructuring how?" "Building it around partnership models instead of dominance hierarchies." Tallis is having what I can only describe as an existential crisis. He's been working with Breck for 2 decades using traditional methods. Now he's questioning everything. Amara smiled slightly. Breck told him that in 20 years, Tallis never stayed when he was hurt. Always went for help. Efficient but not exactly bonding behavior. Daniel thought about that. About all the times he could have left Pip. Should have left by tactical standards. But staying had never been a question. She was his to protect, his to care for. That was just what you did for family. A doctor entered, checked Daniel's vitals, and declared him fit for limited activity. "You can see your partner," she said. "But take it easy. Your body's been through trauma." The moment Daniel stood, the door opened. Pip did not burst in, did not rush him. She entered slowly, carefully, like she understood he was fragile right now. Her tail gave one tentative wag. Her ears came up hopefully. "Hey girl," Daniel said softly. His voice cracked. Pip crossed the space between them and pressed her head gently against his leg. The same way she had that first week when trust was new and terrifying. Daniel rested his hand on her head, feeling the warmth of her. Solid, real, alive. "You saved me," he whispered. "You could have done what instinct said. But you didn't." Pip made a soft sound. Not quite a whine, not quite a purr. Something uniquely hers. She stayed pressed against him as Amara helped Daniel back to the bed. When he sat, Pip lay down beside him, close enough to touch. Over the next few hours, visitors came. Medical staff checking vitals. Engineers explaining the door failure. Other handlers looking at Daniel and Pip with new understanding. The young trainee Sela brought food, human and Corvian portions both. She watched how Pip waited for Daniel to eat first, not from submission but from care. "Can I ask something?" Sela said quietly. Daniel nodded. "How did you know she wouldn't hurt you? When you turned your back?" Daniel considered the question. "I didn't know. Not for certain. But I knew that if I faced her, I'd be treating her like a threat, and she's not a threat. She's my partner, my family, so I showed her what I felt instead of what I feared." Sela absorbed this. Her own handler, the nervous woman from Mars, stood in the doorway. They exchanged a long look. Something unspoken passed between them. Later, after visitors stopped coming, Tallis appeared. He stood in the doorway awkwardly. Breck waited behind him, patient. "I owe you an apology," Tallis said without preamble. "I was wrong. About your methods. About what matters in partnership. Daniel shook his head. You weren't wrong about biology. Pip was fighting every instinct she had. You were right that the instincts are powerful, but you proved that what you built together was more powerful. Talus stepped inside. I've been doing this for 20 years. Thought I understood partnership, but I never asked Breck what he needed. Never stayed when he was hurt. I commanded, he obeyed. We were effective, but we weren't what you and Pip are. Breck moved to stand beside Talus. Put his head under the human's hand. Talus looked startled, then slowly began to stroke his partner's fur. Like it was new, like he had never really done it before, not like this. Coalition approved the program expansion, Talus said. They want you to train other handlers. Show them what you showed us. Daniel looked at Pip. She gazed back with clear amber eyes. We're not special. We just care about each other. That, Amara said from the doorway, is exactly what makes you special, and exactly what everyone else needs to learn. Outside, Station Arclight continued its orbit, but inside the medical bay something fundamental had shifted. The old way of doing things had broken. Something new, something better was being built in its place. 3 weeks changed everything. The training facility that had operated on dominance principles for 2 decades transformed into something gentler. Handler pairs spent more time together outside of formal training. Shared meals became common. The rigid separation between work and relationship blurred until it disappeared. Daniel stood in the demonstration area with Pip at his side. 20 new handler pairs watched from the training floor, some human, some Corvian, some partnerships just beginning, others trying to rebuild what they thought they knew. Partnership isn't about control, Daniel said. His voice carried across the space without needing amplification. Months of teaching had given him confidence he never had before. It's about trust. Real trust. The kind that goes both ways, Pip demonstrated. When Daniel gave signals, she responded, but not like a trained animal following commands, more like a conversation. He asked, she answered. Sometimes she offered alternatives. Sometimes he adjusted based on what she told him through body language. Sela and her handler worked through an exercise nearby. The human, whose name was Rachel, moved differently now. Less commanding, more collaborative. When Sila showed uncertainty, Rachel waited instead of pushing. Progress measured in patience. Talus observed from the upper level. Breck sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. Small changes accumulated into something larger. That morning, Talus had asked Breck what he wanted for breakfast instead of just ordering for both of them. Breck had stared at him like he had grown a second head, then carefully named his preference. Such a small thing. It should not have mattered. But it did. They're learning, Breck said quietly, watching the pairs below. We all are, Talus replied. Coalition observers visited regularly now, not to evaluate for cuts but to document success. The program that had been on the edge of cancellation was now being studied as a model. Other species wanted to adapt it. The Corvians were not the only ones who had built partnerships on dominance. Humans, it turned out, had something to teach the galaxy about cooperation. Amara coordinated everything from her monitoring station. Data flowed in from multiple sources: biorhythmic readings, partnership success rates, incident reports. The numbers told a clear story. Handler pairs using the new methods showed stronger bonds, better communication, higher mission success rates when deployed. The test chamber had been repurposed. Instead of flooding it with pheromones designed to break bonds, it now simulated realistic field conditions. Partners learned to work together under stress, but the stress came from external challenges, not from fighting each other. Daniel finished the demonstration and dismissed the trainees for practice time. He walked with Pip toward the quarters they now shared. The facility had restructured living arrangements. Partners who wanted to stay together could. Many did. Rachel caught up with them in the corridor. Daniel, wait, he turned. Rachel looked nervous. Sila stood behind her, tail low but ears up. I wanted to thank you, Rachel said. A month ago I thought Sela hated me. Every training session was a fight. But she wasn't fighting me. She was scared. Like Pip was. What changed? Daniel asked, though he suspected he knew. I stopped trying to make her obey and started trying to understand what she needed. Rachel's voice softened. Yesterday she had a nightmare. I heard her from my quarters. I went to check on her and she let me stay. Just sat there while she calmed down. This morning she was waiting outside my door. Sela moved closer to Rachel, pressed her side against the human's leg. Rachel's hand went automatically to Sila's head. Natural, easy, like they had been doing it forever instead of just days. That's how it starts, Daniel said. Small moments. Trust built in inches. They continued toward quarters. Inside, Pip claimed her favorite spot on the oversized floor cushion Daniel had requisitioned. He had learned early that Corvians did not fit well in human furniture. Adaptation went both ways, his terminal chimed. Message from Coalition Command. He opened it expecting another data request. Instead, he found deployment orders. Daniel read through twice to make sure he understood. We got our assignment, he told Pip. She lifted her head, ears perking. Border Patrol. Disputed territory. They want to test if we can handle real field conditions. Daniel sat beside her on the cushion. This is what we've been working toward. Proof that the partnership works outside controlled environments. Pip made a questioning sound, her version of asking if he was worried. A little, Daniel admitted. But mostly I'm ready. We're ready, the door chimed. Talus entered when Daniel called permission. The older instructor looked uncomfortable, like he still had not adjusted to treating handlers as equals instead of subordinates. I wanted to speak before you deployed, Talus said. He held something in his hands, a small carved token. This is a Corvian tradition, given to warriors before they leave for dangerous missions. It represents the Pack's faith in them. He offered it to Pip. She took it gently in her mouth, then set it down between herself and Daniel. Symbolism clear. The Pack included both of them. I also wanted to say that if this mission succeeds, Coalition is approving 4 more human Corvian teams for field deployment. Talus continued. You're not just proving yourselves. You're paving the way for everyone else. Daniel felt the weight of that responsibility. But looking at Pip, seeing the confidence in her eyes, the fear diminished. They had already proven the most important thing. That different species could not just work together, but care for each other. Everything else was details. After Talus left, Daniel and Pip prepared for departure. Packing took little time. They traveled light. What mattered could not be packed anyway. At the transport dock, other handler pairs gathered to see them off. Sela and Rachel, young trainees, veterans reconsidering what partnership meant. They formed a line, traditional Corvian gesture of respect. Pip stood taller, accepting the honor. Daniel looked at the faces around them, human and Corvian, all learning the same lesson he and Pip had figured out months ago in a dark enclosure, where trust was built one careful moment at a time. Family was not limited by species. It was created by choice, reinforced by action. Proven by staying when leaving would be easier. The transport called final boarding. Daniel and Pip walked toward their future together. Neither leading, neither following. Just moving forward as one. Behind them, station arc light gleamed in the dark. Inside it, old ways were dying and better ones taking root. The work would continue. More pairs would form. More bonds would be tested and proven strong. But for now, for this moment, Daniel and Pip had their own path ahead. Dangerous territory, unknown challenges, and the absolute certainty that whatever came next, they would face it together. Pip glanced up at him as they boarded. Her tail wagged once. Daniel smiled and rested his hand on her head. Ready? He asked. Her answer came not in words, but in the way she pressed against his side. Steady, sure, unbreakable. They were ready.